it's not just me like it normally is. It's not the same old leftovers. I have a full panel for you guys, okay? I sourced some of the best and brightest that I could possibly find to discuss such topics, because the reality is that while I'm well-versed in some areas of music, there are other areas of music where I would rather let the heavy hitters do the talking, you know what I mean? Or at least let the heavy hitters weigh in, and then I can counterpoint. To me, that's very important. There was a recent sort of spike in the hubbub and the drama within the Sabbath verse, if you will. And it's kind of interesting because it does kind of overlap into some other things that we have discussed on the channel. And I find this sort of stuff really interesting. But like I said, there are certain things I understand. There are certain things I don't understand about Black Sabbath. And so I need to bring in some peeps to help me discuss this. But before I even do that, I have them all waiting in the digital green room. I want to take a minute to unbox something that I received a little while ago. I've been looking forward to getting this mail. I want to revel in it. I'm going to bring out the gentleman who sent it to me. This is really a cool idea. So I'm taking up the full screen here so I can unbox this for you. What is it? Well, I know what it is. I'm just really excited to say, wow, that is so fucking great. Wait, oh my God, I dropped it on the ground. This is awesome. So this is a juxtaposition of two really cool fucking things, in my personal opinion. My love for, all things Misfits, Sam Hain and Danzig, and my love for David Lynch. And my buddy here, who's waiting in the digital green room, sent me a "Who Killed." You can't hear me off mic. Sorry, I'm not used to this new microphone. Who Killed Laura Palmer? I wish. You know what the reality is? I'm jealous. I wish I had thought of this brilliance. This is brilliant. Who Killed Laura Palmer from fucking Twin Peaks? God damn it! I'm doing such a poor job of. Look at this. Look at this freaking shirt, man. That is fuck. Oh my God, I suck. Here, now you can see it. Oh, we're not interviewing her. Dead women tell no lies. Hold on, take a look, and then we're gonna bring out our first guest, and he's gonna tell us about the inspiration to do this. I mean, it really is. I mean, just to sort of juxtapose two things together in such a great way. I love this. You know what? I love it so much that I might even go a little crazy. I might have to color this in with a little purple Sharpie, just like the OG, the way that Glenn used to color things in. Might need a little purple in there just to add to it. This is great though, and these are available at a very special web shop. I'll put the link down in the description. It's not there yet, but let me bring out our first guest, Don Argott. Is that how you say your last name?
Yeah,
Don?
yeah.
Argott.
Yep.
Welcome to the show, Don. It's been a while. You've been on here before.
Yeah, man, it was fun.
It was fun.
Danzig, talking Misfits.
Oh, yeah. First of all, thank you for the amazing shirt. Tell me about a little bit about what you're doing here and what where the idea came from and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, man. So, I've been a filmmaker and a musician most of my life, and, mostly do documentary films. And that's, we were on the show. I think the last time I was on, I talked about the Dio documentary that we had done that had just come out, and we were chatting about that. And, so I've had a really, great career, very proud of like what we've been able to accomplish. And, we kind of hit this pinnacle, we did crazy, somehow we ended up doing the Taylor Swift docuseries, which was, such an incredible situation to even be in, let alone like the fact that like it's us doing it, you know what I mean? Like just felt like we don't belong here, you know what I mean? Like that, just that feeling of, just always feeling like an outsider, which is what we've always felt,
So just so people understand, like clarify this in your mind for a moment. Don here, who not only was responsible for the Dio documentary, which is really fucking great, really, really great documentary. I learned a lot about Dio, but this guy, the thing that you've been hearing about the Taylor Swift thing, the Disney Plus thing, this is the fucking guy. He fucking did that shit, man. Fucking insane. Fucking insane. And then tell me, it's just crazy, dude. I mean, it's
well, it all kind of ties together because that was, as you can imagine, a pretty intense, project. And at the same time, my father passed away last year while we were in the middle of all this. My wife's sister passed away a year prior to that. So it had been like kind of a pretty rough go of it, even though there was like a lot of personal or professional success. There was a lot of personal kind of trauma. And I think it was just a combination of like, I've always, I can't be still. I'm always creating. If it's not film, it's music. And then I've always loved designing. Like I always, just when I've done, our films and stuff, I've like designed some of the After Effects things and title sequences and stuff like that. So I really love doing it. And I just had this idea one day, and it was like, I love t-shirts. I've always wanted to like kind of make my own t-shirts, but I've never, it's like until you take that first step, it's like, yeah, sure. Everybody and their mom wants to make their own t-shirts, so like but the people that do it, so I was like, let me just kind of take a crack at this. And originally the title came from this, I don't know where I think we had just seen Superman. And, I don't know why I woke up and it was like kind of a dark day, and I was like, like I was thinking about Superman. I'm like, and then thinking about like, do superheroes like ever get depressed? And then I was like, I kind of took that idea and ran with it. And then I came up with all these like very, stupid tongue in cheek. Like I had Batman on a stoop smoking a cigarette that said sitting this one out. And then, I started this like a T-Public thing. And, it's all IP. It's all copyrighted IP. So, like, I put it up and, like, it got taken down. I was like, listen, if I'm going to be serious about this, I got to do super original stuff that's not based on, like, superhero IP, obviously this is and the parody shirt biz, I guess you could, if you want to call it, it's pretty rich. There's a lot of stuff out there.
Yeah.
And, I love t-shirts. I've been wearing t-shirts my whole life of bands and, other things that I'm into. And so I just kind of took this idea and it evolved. And, because we had just had such an intense, kind of 2 years, summer hit and I kind of had some time for the first time. And I was like, oh, let me just take a rip at this and see if I could turn it into anything. At the very least, my goal was like, if I can make enough money to like subsidize my Misfits, buying, habit, that would be a win, So that's, I would say all proceeds of these shirts go to me to personally buy and maintain Misfits history.
You are supporting this man's Misfits addiction by buying these shirts. So go out there, check it out. Put a link down in the description, and yada yada yada. Let's bring out our other guests they're waiting in the digital green room right now. Chris Allo has been on the show before as well. We've done shows about Kiss. He is, I was like, I need a Sabbath correspondent. And Chris has a show. He started a show called the Sabbath Stones. And they talk about in the way that we try to sort of analyze things about Mr. Samhain Danzig. He does that with Sabbath. And that's like his thing. And he brought along his friend, Bill Clark, who has his own show, and he'll tell us a little bit about that. So let's bring out our other two guests, and then we'll launch into things. So here is Chris, and here is Bill, and let me switch this. That's a little bit better. Okay.
There we go.
Hello, gentlemen.
Hey, Jeff. How's it going? How's it going, Don? What's up, Bill?
Hello. Tell us a little bit about the Sabbath Stones. What brought that about?
Okay, yeah. I have been on a contributor to the Sea of Tranquility channel on YouTube for probably 5 years or so now. And that's run by my buddy Pete Porto. And it's a very successful YouTube channel. Pete's worked really hard at it. And I was on mostly a contributor to two shows, the Hudson Valley Squares, and which is basically people in the Hudson Valley, music related, who talk, different rock topics. And I also did the Monsters Den, which is a show where we discuss monster movies and horror movies. And Pete and I are huge Black Sabbath fans. And so I kept saying to Pete, we should do something Black Sabbath related. So we started a Black Sabbath show called the Sabbath Stones, where, definitely inspired by Jeff's great work on Danzig, Misfits, and Samhain. We analyze and dissect minutia in Black Sabbath.
We'll put a link down to that. I got a lot of links to put in the description. This was all, I slapped this all together a few hours ago, as I do, because I just, randomly, we scheduled this in advance, and then I wait to the last minute to do stuff. And then, hey, Bill, I've never met Bill. This is Bill's, and I meet a lot of people through doing this podcasting stuff. Bill, tell us a little bit about what you do and say hello and whatnot.
It's a classic rock and metal review. There's the logo. You might recognize that. Maybe. Some of you, right? But it's just basically what I love about it. It's some basic rock review, some box sets. So I go to a concert review. But it's just a reflection of what I'm doing. That's what makes it so easy and fun. But I do have like a bootleg angle. I'm a big bootleg collector now, probably going on 10, 15 years. Once you have everything by all your favorite bands that you can buy commercially, where do you go? And that's where I started going. And Chris basically found me through the channel, and we had a mutual fondness for Sabbath and bootlegs, and just kind of started hanging out, I guess, the last year or so.
Yeah.
This is going to be a very interesting discussion. I am like, this is going to be very interesting. And it's kind of funny because the T-shirt runs through it too a little bit. Sorry, what were you just saying, Bill?
I also started doing a Black Sabbath update about 2.5 years ago, right when Chris's Sabbath Stones started. Unknowingly, we just kind of coincidentally started doing those shows around the same time. So
nice. Now you got to do a crossover episode where you do one half on the Sabbath Stones and you do the second half on your show, and it brings people, it crosses them over. It's a crossover episode.
Like Happy Days meets Mork and Mindy.
Yes, like Happy Days meets Mork and Mindy. That's right.
Just like that.
So, all right. So to sort of like, before I let you boys go to town here. So my understanding of the situation is obviously, the Black Sabbath, and please correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. Black Sabbath, before they were Black Sabbath, they were a band going under the name Earth, or as they would probably pronounce it, Earth. And they had recorded in the studio with this guy Jim Simpson, who was the original manager of Black Sabbath before he either left or got bought out by Sharon's father. Right?
No.
Oh, no. Okay. I'm all wrong.
I mean, to completely back up, they started as a 6-piece. I mean, just because I know, Jeff, when I need to learn Danzig and Misfits and Samhain, I go to you. So I don't want to, I don't want to miss anything. So and me up. But the four main Sabbath guys that we all know and love, the original guys, Ozzy, Tony, Geezer, and Bill. They started the Polka Toke Blues Band with two other guys. Whoa. It was a saxophonist and a slide guitarist. They had that band for 2 weeks. Tony Iommi felt those other two guys weren't working out, and historically, Tony Iommi has always been non-confrontational. Most of the former Black Sabbath singers in the past have always said how they never got fired because the phone stopped ringing.
Damn.
So Tony's plan was to break up Polka Tulk, which they did as the 6-piece, and then the core 4 members reunited as Earth. And then, yes, they met up with Jim Simpson eventually as Earth. Jim started managing them as Earth. While he managed them, they did record demos in January and March of 1969. By late 1969, like around September-ish, they decided to change the name to Black Sabbath. Then the first Black Sabbath record comes out February 13th, 1970. They tour, they record the album Paranoid, and then while touring for Paranoid, they get bought out by Patrick Meehan, who was the band's second manager.
Oh.
And Patrick Meehan is very famous for supposedly ripping off Black Sabbath of a huge amount of money. And the other thing that Patrick Meehan is very famous for, which we could talk about at some point, is Black Sabbath tried to record a live album in like 1973. They didn't release it. They felt it wasn't up to snuff. Patrick Meehan kept the tapes and famously illegally released that album in 1980 as an album called Live at Last, but somehow got it released worldwide. I know I have four or five copies of it myself. And I mentioned it to Bill the other day. I feel, and I'm sure we'll get into it, but Jim Simpson's precedent with this whole Earth Tapes thing, I feel he has got to be influenced by Patrick Meehan, because he's like, well, Patrick Meehan got away with it, so why wouldn't I get away with it?
Before we continue on, I want to give both Don and Bill a chance to sort of shade in or color or fill in anything on top of what Chris has so eloquently, like an artist, like a true artiste, has just laid it out just so nicely. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Bill.
Well, so the topic of tonight basically is this attempted release at Earth, 9 songs called the Legendary.
Whoa, wait a minute. Wait, Bill, before you get there, I'm just in terms of, is there anything else in Chris's incredible sort of explanation that is there anything else that you would add to that or contrast with it before we move on?
I think he kind of covered the short run of the 70s there, and then skipped ahead to this possible legal precedent. It hasn't really held up this time, but yeah, that's the gist of where we're at.
Okay. And Don, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
No.
Oh, perfect. Okay. All right. Then moving on. Okay. So now, all right. So then Bill, take it away, Bill, about the what you were just saying. Now that we're all on the even keel here. So what happened now? Because here's what I had saw on Facebook, and what made me want to discuss this on my channel, in part because the Misfits community went through something very similar recently, and I thought I was like, wow, look at that. There's like a parallel here, and I wonder, I don't know. I just found it very interesting. What exactly has happened? I know that Sharon Osbourne is like a sort of like tour de force in a variety of ways. In fact, I got to tell you, right after Ozzy passed away, and I had heard talk like, oh, they're going to do a biopic at some point, and I would like to see an Ozzy biopic. But I got to tell you something. Who I kind of want to see a biopic about is Sharon Osbourne, because she has had some roller coaster of like, just seeing it from her perspective would be very interesting to me. I don't know, artistically, as a outsider, but I know that Sharon is a very sort of controversial sort of figure. How does Sharon Osbourne play into what's happening now? She said she released some emails between her and Jim Simpson. I don't know. Go for it. Talk to me about this.
Chris would be more of the forensic scientist with all the details as far as the controversy and the blockages. The short version would be that Jim Simpson just basically out of nowhere, I think, what would you say, Chris? This past June.
Yes, June of 2025 announced
that this release would be coming out in July, right? So it was a really short notice. And on his own record label, Big Bear Records, primarily a jazz label located in Birmingham, which he formed, I think, in '69, right?
Yeah, it's been around for decades. I saw that in the email. That was one of his rebuttals was, hey, I'm not some rinky-dink label. I've been around for a while.
He has. There's a lot of shadiness about him trying to get this out in a way, though. For one thing, announcing it's coming out in 3 or 4 weeks is a little crazy. I think it was very close to the date of the Back to the Beginning show.
That's what he was capitalizing on.
In one of those letters to Sharon alluded to, you said you would meet with me the day of rehearsal before the biggest show of Ozzy's career in the last 10 years. So it's been a lot of underhanded sort of, well, it's legal, but I'm really trying to skirt around the edges here. And
is it actually legal?
Around,
Is it actually legal? I want to hear what Don has to say, because Don is a documentary filmmaker. Don has probably dealt with so much of this sort of stuff. Don, what do you have to say about any of this?
Yeah, it's the world now of like super high powered music licensing. It's huge. It's like oil companies. It's big business, and like everybody who has IP wants to just own that IP and exploit that IP, and they want to milk it for every cent they can get out of it. And you can't begrudge anybody for it's their music, it's their art. I guess you can always take kind of like two perspectives on things like this, like whose music is it? Obviously it's the band's music, but like if they recorded it, is it doing anybody a service by like sitting in a box somewhere, rotting away when people could be listening to it and enjoying it? Or is that the artist's right to not want to put it out? And I think like it gets that you can have super passionate and honestly super compelling arguments on both sides of that.
Agree.
I think I just see both sides of it. I don't necessarily everything for me is a case by case basis.
Subjective. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm sure in the case of this Earth thing, which I don't know the backstory and you guys would tell me, but like, if the guy paid for the recordings, like if he owns the master tapes, is that the case? Is there proof that exists? And then you're doing just within publishing at that time, and did they have a publishing company set up when they recorded as Earth? Probably not. They probably weren't thinking that far ahead. So there's, it's just like there's all these, it gets really kind of like, I think kind of sad at the end of the day, like, as a filmmaker and a lover of music, and, when we're making movies and wanting to use songs that, I love, that, I think fit the scene or whatever that may be, it's the first thing always, especially if you're, an independent filmmaker, is like me, you can't afford it. I can't afford to put Layla in my documentary. It's like, it's like that'll be the budget of the documentary. So, but at the same time, I think like I've also, been a musician, and I've recorded a bunch of stuff, and people have licensed stuff from me. And, I've licensed to big studios that paid a lot of money, and I've licensed to student films who I gave for free, because like that's my prerogative. Is my music, and if someone wants to pay me a lot of money for it, great. And if someone wants to use it and I think it's cool, and I can make that decision and say, yeah, man, go for it. And I believe in that kind of pay it forward thing. But at the level that this is all at, is there's no love being lost with anybody. That's for sure.
So what's interesting is, and here's where this is for me the core of the discussion and the controversy, and basically you have two sides of a sword here, and one side of the sword, which Don also eloquently laid out, is the fact that you have the artist rights, which are, hey, we we wrote and we owned the intellectual property of this music and the publishing and what have you and all that stuff. But then you have the other side of, you know, especially in the 70s, where it cost money to, if you're not putting it on a fucking boombox or whatever, a tape deck or something, you got to go into a studio, you got to cut a demo that costs money. You have to pay for an engineer, you have to pay for the studio time. And the person, just because the band has recorded their songs onto the physical medium that they're recording onto, and the session that's being paid for, thereby puts the chain of title and ownership under the person who financed said thing. So, for instance, to kind of parallel this to Jerry Only suing Glenn Danzig in the 90s, in the late 80s, early 90s, Jerry, you know, a lot of fans would get upset and be like, hey, like, Glenn wrote those songs. What is he doing, you know, doing this sort of thing? The reality is Jerry put up a lot of fucking money to have those songs recorded. Jerry had a vested interest and a stake in the actual master recordings. And therefore, Jim Simpson, whether he owned the publishing or the songs or not, if Black Sabbath clearly did or whatever, there's their music. If he had a chain of title, if he had paid for those recordings, he may not own the song, but he owns the recording and therefore also has a stake. However, what I personally would believe is that, or I would imagine what a court, at the end of the day, his stake ends up being kind of weaker than the artistic stake, only because sure, he has the physical, you know, stuff, but as long as he doesn't have the release to publish it, he technically doesn't have the legal ability to do it. Although, you know, and again, I'm sure Don can attest to this, as he said, the world of high-powered lawyering, like, at the end of the day, it's about who, you know, what knight do you have fighting for your cause and how much gold do you have to pay him, right? So, discourse, thoughts.
Absolutely. You know, the one thing that I don't know if you guys can hear me. I lowered the volume a little bit. I'm getting some kind of feedback, but the one thing that Jim Simpson has continually claimed is that because the recordings are 56 years old in the UK, there's some kind of copyright law that if they're over 50 years old, they are quote unquote in the public domain. Now, we're not in the UK, and I'm certainly not a copyright lawyer. So that, to me, doesn't exactly make sense, because then why couldn't I start making copies of the original Black Sabbath record, which came out more than 50 years ago, and just sell it on Aloe Frumess?
Well, the copyright stuff is a little complicated, and I don't know what the UK copyright stuff is, but it's usually you have to have filed. You have to refile for a copyright. So, like, you couldn't do that to a Sabbath record because it's already copywritten, and they've continued to re-up the copyright. But in the case of like something that's been sitting around, after a period of time, it becomes in the public domain. Now, you guys remember Steamboat Willie famously, he's in the public domain, and so now people are taking that character and doing whatever they want with it.
Horror movies,
and that's the same with Winnie the Pooh.
And that's the law, So it's like at the end of the day, that's why whether right or wrong, like lawyers are going to argue, what's actual law, and then any other kind of evidence that you could bring in to kind of prove your case. I think at the end of the day, as always, the fans lose out always. It's because because the focus gets taken away from what's really important, which is the music. There's nothing more important than that. We're not here because Black Sabbath signed great contracts. We're here because they made incredible music. So like, that's the whole thing. And, these things become these, big spectacles that play out in the press. And, we all are waiting around like, oh, are we going to get the scraps? Will they finally release them to us? And, it's, I get it. That's part of the culture and that's part of the way the world is, but it is, it's cool to know that there's still discoveries out there. It's always like, that's the thing. I think it keeps everybody going is like, there's still stuff out there that's untapped and not unheard, and that's exciting. Like in the case of the Misfits and in the case of this Earth stuff, like, you know, I'm sure years from now there's going to be, you know, they're going to keep rolling out, like, you know, unreleased everything, you know, as these things emerge. And that's exciting. It's exciting. It's just, you know, it's when you're at the level of, like, you know, the Sharon Osbournes of the world, that they're, you know, all that high powered lawyer stuff. It's just, you know, it's not going to be pretty.
Another angle to the copyright renewal or extension. Here's something I just thought of that happened a year or two ago with Pink Floyd. And they didn't actually release it physically, I don't think. They put some songs on their website, some, I believe, live songs. I don't even know if they ever released them in the first place, but there may have been some bootlegs out there. And by posting them on their own website for a week, it basically became the new copyright for these live songs that I don't think they ever even released, unless they were on some box sets or something. So I think there is something for like at least the 2 songs on this new batch that ended up on the first album. By being re-released in multiple formats over the years, that might just be auto-renewing at least those 2 songs. But the gist of this, Jeff, is that there's 7 songs on here that have never been heard before or released before.
Well, technically, Blue Suede Shoes has been released because it was part of that black box set that came out years ago.
Okay.
So
Right,
of these 9 songs, technically 3 of them have previously been officially released on, you know, Black Sabbath releases. They're slightly different, just like, you know, the many versions of the different Misfits recordings, you know, the different versions of Cough Cool and She and Night of the Living Dead and everything else. But yeah, so three of these songs have been released previously. So that was the first thing I thought of as far as, you know, copyright.
Listen, it gets really, really sticky. And you know what else is sticky? Like really, really sticky?
Riot stickers.
How the hell did you know? I'm going to say it is Riot friggin' stickers, okay? Riot stickers, that's right. Riot Stickers is the official sponsor of the Frumess channel. I just shoved everybody backstage. By the way, real quick, Bill, I'm realizing the feedback that Chris was mentioning, I think it's coming from your mic. It might be your wireless mic. It's a little dirty. I don't know if you can kind of futz with that while I do my little sponsor commercial break here real quick. Riot Stickers are the official sponsor of the Frumess channel. You can get 1,000 stickers for $79. It's an incredible deal. Free shipping and handling, okay? Working with CEO Sharpie Rides Dream. Look at this banner he printed out of my face in a moon. The moon face, which, much like the Crimson Ghost, I shamelessly took for myself. But anybody can do it. Anybody can do it because that image is in the public domain, which is part of our conversation right now. My point is that you can get really cool stickers. You can get banners. You can get T-shirts. You can get buttons. You can get drum heads. You can get anything at riotstickers.com/Frumess. That's FRUMESS. Link is down in the description. And, what else can I say? But, I know one thing that I can say. Well, we'll got to go to the
Riot Stickers, we are the bomb. Riot Stickers, we are the bomb. RiotStickers.com. We are the bomb. Riot Stickers, we are the bomb. Riot Stickers, we are the bomb. RiotStickers.com. We are the bomb. We are the bomb. We are the bomb. We are the bomb.
And that is a promise. Oh, we still got snow. It's like that Sabbath song, Snowblind. It is what it is. We got to roll with it. We got to roll with it. It is what it is. All right. So what we were talking about before, in terms of stuff that we have heard before, stuff that we haven't heard before, yada, 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 XYZ 1, 2, 3. What's interesting to me, and here's the thing that here's where I struggle with all of this stuff, because I do, like, a lot of Don's feelings about this stuff, about like the music fans are the ones who suffer. I do agree. By the same token, I also feel that at the end of the day, like, unless the person who like owns the recording or owns the intellectual copyright makes a decision that ultimately it's not for us to have. Like, it's just not. Like, that's where, I mean, that's the hill I've chosen to die on in a variety of ways. I think it is subjective. I don't think it applies to every single situation. And sometimes there's just fucking street justice, and street justice is street justice. And that's just the way that shit rolls. And, it is what it is, but there are other times where I kind of feel like the attitude of, well, yes, I do think some music fans do suffer. A lot of music fans suffer. There are still others who are just like, fuck you, give this to me just because I can get things. Because, in the last 25 years, music, the idea of being able to possess and own music has completely changed, right? Like, it's no longer a privilege to be able to control the flow of your intellectual property. If a motherfucker gets a hold of some shit, figures out how to rip it, then it doesn't matter. It's out of your hands and it's on the internet forever. And I think that has changed the conversation about how things are kept, chain of command, title, this, that, and the other. So it's a very interesting sort of conversation to see. Here's this guy, he owns the recordings, what you're mentioning about copyright law in England, and you have Sharon Osbourne, who is like this fierce woman who's like, fuck you, and probably really pissed off, I'd imagine, that he's choosing to do this around that date, especially considering the impact of, like, Ozzy died 2 weeks later. Like, what the fuck? Yeah. And now you're going to release these tapes? Like, what the actual fuck?
I said at the time, Jeff, that I thought he was doing it at that time because they would be a little too distracted to try to do something about it.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Right. What exactly? So, all right, but so explain to me the sort of history behind Sharon Osbourne being the way that she is, and she seems like incredibly guarded and protective. Tell me a little bit about that. Like, why? Because I know that there's something there. Sometimes I see YouTube videos. Give me better context, because I don't really know. I don't.
She probably does get a lot of that from her father, right, Chris?
Yes, yeah.
He was a bulldog of a guy.
Sharon's father was named Don Arden, who was one of the most notorious gangster type managers in England. Managed a ton of different bands, a lot of bands that I'm not really familiar with, but one of which was The Move in England. At some point during the 70s, Don Arden did manage Black Sabbath, and he did manage them during the Born Again record in 1983. Don Arden's daughter was Sharon Arden, and once Sabbath split with Ozzy, then Sharon took her managerial skills that she learned from her ruthless father, found Ozzy, and decided to manage him on a solo career, and pretty much the rest of that is history. I mean, she's become one of the most famous or infamous managers in all of rock and roll. I mean, there's really, there's a handful of managers that you can think of, and she's one of them.
It comes down to being like an issue of like, oh, Sharon doesn't like that, and Sharon has an iron fist, or is it more like, is it more dubious and like, hey, like raising an eyebrow, like, so these tapes were like known by Sabbath fans and just hadn't seen the light of day?
I mean, there was Bill, why don't you take this part, because there was a lot of rumors, but
there was a lot of sort of just rumor and speculation. A couple of the songs you had heard of the name, the title, but really a decent amount of these songs were out of the blue, Trying to think of out of the 9 of them, you had 2 of them were on the first record. You had that Blue Suede Shoes that they had played on a B Club in Germany in '69, and that audio's made the rounds for years. But the other 6 were really just you had heard of the 2 of them. You had only heard snippets on like a Black Sabbath documentary video.
Right.
So what do we have left there, Chris? 4 songs that we really were
right. And Evening Right was
It must have been
is on
shocking.
Is on the
And another one that they had
leg.
cover song that they had played at one show that popped up 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Their oldest show. So 3 original songs, that we had never even heard of the titles of these songs before. So that would be the meat and the potatoes of it. But yeah, they're gems to Sabbath collectors. They've been really chintzy with giving us some real quality outtakes from the earliest years. Probably that Weevil Woman on Master of Reality in '71, Chris. Was that the first true nugget we got from them?
Yeah, there's been a few things, but really not much. They are very, very tight-lipped. I mean, I used to write for many rock magazines, Circus, Pit Magazine, Metal Maniacs, Metal Edge, and I was able to interview Tony Iommi and Geezer Butler several times. And I spoke to Tony Iommi about all the, unreleased material. And he's like, I have everything. He's like, I have everything from every lineup. And I was like, wow, Tony, you really should think about releasing some of that. And he was like, yeah. I go, and my example was the Deep Purple Appreciation Society, who put out like every fucking live gig that Deep Purple ever did in the 70s. But it's great. If you're a Deep Purple fan, buy it. If you're not a fan of that, don't buy it. But by getting it out to the people, you're A, satisfying your fan base, and B, you're making money for everybody involved. But Tony Iommi is notorious for not wanting to put things out that he is not 100% behind for whatever reason.
And I think that's probably the heart of all this, right? It's like, there's there's this relationship that we have with music that once you find a band, you claim ownership of it to a degree. They become part of your life, your family. It's the I always say, like, how many times why music is so important to people is because it's always there, and it won't let you down. If you're looking to be sad and the sad song to go to, you're gonna, like, it's there for you. So I think, like, there's a really intense, and it's obviously gotten just exponentially more insane as the internet and all the shit that has brought on to our culture, and how we now think we're entitled to everything. You know what I mean? Like, oh, there's an unreleased thing, give me it. And I understand that entitlement to a degree. I don't agree with it, because again, if it's your music, if it's my music and I think I sound like shit and everybody wants to hear it, I don't want you to hear it. So I don't want you to hear it. So, like, I'm sorry you can't hear it because that's what you want, but I don't want you to hear it because I don't like my performance on whatever the reason. It's, and that much is, but when that's a little bit different, I think, than this, because they were recorded, for a reason, presumably for either a demo or a record, and it never came to be. So then what happens to that stuff? And I think, like, that's the kind of shit that keeps music folks like us, like, get engaged in, like, what else is out there. And I remember the Crossroads, like that movie back in the 80s with Ralph Macchio, and finding that the missing Robert Johnson song. Like, it was a cool thing, like that there was maybe one more song out there, and that is exciting to be able to feel like, wow, you can still,
it's an adventure,
new things, especially in a world where everything is, like, at our fingertips. Like, there's still stuff out there that's untapped and undiscovered, and that's, of course, super exciting. But then you get into ownership, and at that level, you're dealing with everybody involved, aside from probably the guy who wants to release it. who probably does well, but not like Sharon Osbourne and these guys well, like Black Sabbath well. Like, what do they care? You know what I mean? Like, they don't need the money to put it out. Like, they don't. There's no. What's their motivation for putting it out, other than like the fact that people want it? I get that, but like, there's nothing that's driving them. Like, they don't. If we don't put this record out, we're not going to make. Not be able to pay our mortgage next month. Like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I guess in our minds that should be enough of a reason at the end of the day, right, Chris?
Yeah, no, 100%, Don. I think
we want it.
We want it, but you are 100% right. To these guys, they're like, this is something we didn't use because we didn't like it or we didn't think it's good enough. And I completely agree with you. And it's just like the fact that we as fans always like to think that the guys in the band are friends, when the reality is the guys in the band they're co-workers. It's a big difference.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, it's weird because I think the correct word, it's not my favorite word, but it's a word that is a result of the internet. It's entitlement. There's a sense of entitlement. There's something that's just out of reach. It captures your imagination. What could this be? I have to know. What it is a piece of the puzzle of the story of something that you care about deeply, and it answers a question, right? It's answering a question. It's filling in a blank. For me, that's why I'm such a big fan of like demos and like the sketches of songs. To me, that stuff is intoxicating. Like, for instance, when the Pixies released the Doolittle demos, I was floored because the first versions of those songs that they demoed in the studio are so different from the final versions. And so it tells you a story. And the Pixies have been so awesome about like, hey, you want that fucking acoustic, you want the acoustic demo that I gave to the engineer to then make our demos for that eventually got picked up by 4AD. Here you go. And to me, I'm like, oh my God, what a feast, because here's just Black Francis with his acoustic, and he's doing Joey Santiago's guitar parts with his mouth and telling Gary Smith, hey, I want this to go here in this part of the song. Or fucking Richard O'Brien showing Richard Hartley, the arranger of the Rocky Horror Show, hey, this is how here's the songs, right? Like these are the songs, and like, and they sound like Lou Reed songs. They don't, all the songs, and you're like, wow, so that's where that came from. Like, it tells a story. It shows you like the places. It deepens and enriches your understanding of the music. However, the counterbalance, again, and it's really just a seesaw of conversation, is at the end of the day, here's the thing. I think that if it's released, if it's available on the internet, it's fair game. That's just what it is. If it's out on the internet and it's easily obtainable, if it's on the Internet Archive, I'm going to fucking download it. Like, it's out there, man. It's out there, not preventing you from profiting or keeping your artistic integrity by not sharing, this very special, sensitive, unreleased kind of recording. But if it is something that's unreleased and one is in possession of it, I think that leads to a sense of privilege, but not like privilege. What do I mean when I say privilege? I mean, like, it's a privilege of like, there's an obligation there. Like, where like, am I going to be the one? Like, I don't want to be the one that shits on the rug. You don't want to be the one that shits on the rug. It's not our place to shit on the rug. Somebody out there is going to be unhinged enough and shit on the fucking rug. In the case of how did the Earth tapes end up leaking in the first place? Because I guess they're now available, right?
Well, yes. Basically what happened was, while they were preparing to release the physical release, which was on CD and LP, for some reason, they were legally released to download in September.
Holy shit.
So while people like Bill and myself had pre-orders in for the CDs and LPs, suddenly the download popped up in September.
Holy shit.
Meanwhile, the physical release kept getting pushed back and pushed back. So the digital download was up from September until November. And that I think it was November 15th when Sharon Osbourne published those emails that she had back and forth with Jim Simpson. Jim Simpson countered with a press release. Sharon countered with her press release. I think that was all like November 14th, 15th, 16th.
Wow.
Then on November 20th, the official digital downloads were pulled from websites all over. But of course, just like you said, Jeff, once it's on the internet, it's on the internet. So thank God it was, for the fans anyway. You could take whatever side in the argument you want.
Sure.
But thankfully, since it was released digitally, fans can find it if they look hard enough.
The bottom line, it's what you just said. It's what I just said. Here's the thing. Once it's out, this conversation we're having, it's just metaphoric. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, it truly doesn't, like, none of this shit matters. Once it's leaked, that's it. It's done. Like, it's a moot issue. It's available and it will spread, and that will be that. And in that case, I think it's a net win because of what Don was saying. Hey, music lovers can now embrace and hear all this shit that they want to hear. It doesn't matter anymore. For me, my personal hang-up is when something is preventable for the sake of somebody's ownership of something, then what right do I have to fucking leak it to the world? I think that's kind of fucked up. I think that's not fair. And so that's what I personally struggle with in these kinds of ideas and conversations. So where does everything fall right now with Jim Simpson and Sharon Osbourne?
I haven't heard legally exactly what's happening, Chris, other than I'm sure Sharon and Sabbath are working hard to prevent this from coming out. It's still listed as being released, I think, in the UK in the spring coming up, not in the US until like about a year from now, believe it or not. It's about the 5th date, but they had been moving back a couple weeks or months, and now it moved back like 14 months, the last move. But in
the crazy thing about all this stuff is that all this shit that's happening right now is going to create a new frenzy in the collector's market. Just like if there was a handful of these records that got pressed, you know what I mean? Wow. And then like some, like, in the Misfits case of 12 hits and that kind of stuff where, the band doesn't profit at that level, but those are the prices that are insane. You know what I mean? That like someone's going to pay some ungodly amount for an unreleased, you know what I mean? Like just because it's rare.
Pragmatically,
a weird.
Go ahead.
I was going to say I had that very conversation with Bill the other day because Bill was like, well, maybe a few, because both Bill and myself have now bought official bootlegs with printed covers and everything from somebody off eBay where it was temporarily up. And Bill said, which is true, he's like, do you think maybe there was a few physical copies from the legit Big Bear records that got out? And I said, 100%. And my exact example, Don, was it took me 25 years, but I actually finally found a legit original CD of 12 Hits from Hell.
Nice.
Wow.
It cost me $100.
Yeah.
Wow.
But, which I thought was a steal because I paid $20 for a bootleg CDR 25 years ago.
Yep.
So to finally land an original for $100 was great. I don't know if I'll live 25 years to get an original Big Bear of the Earth tapes, but we'll see.
That's awesome.
That's crazy. And you know what's
another interesting point about the shadiness of Jim Simpson and the Big Bear release? When it was announced for release, you could pre-order it on dozens, hundreds probably of record labels and online sites and stores, but not through Big Bear Records. They were selling all these other records, but not their probably biggest
Not their
release.
own, yeah.
That's
So it's like they didn't want to be involved in the direct.
That's exactly right.
distribution,
That's
so
exactly what that was.
Suspicious little.
That was a very
protecting
public,
their liability.
right? That's a very public way of like, all those places probably, went to Big Bear. Big Bear was like, sure, here you go, but not on Big Bear's site because that would, create a
I don't know the details, you guys would, but did they probably just Big Bear licensed it to these other distributors, right? To release it? Is that?
No, they were just other online record stores. You know.
And the first,
common.
right, Bill, they were only in the UK, and then eventually it went to like Amazon UK and then Amazon US, and then you could get it anywhere. You could order it anywhere. Of course, none of those actually shipped.
Right.
So now, in the interim of when we were going to do the show, Chris, you sent me an email just as I was seeing it. And Don, I don't know if you had seen this footage as well. I don't even know if it's still up because you said watch it while you can, and I did.
It is.
And I was like, oh, it is still up.
Yep.
Now, how do you think that came about? And I guess that's just really, really rare, significant Black Sabbath foot. It's so meaningless to me. I'm sorry to say. I don't mean that in disrespectful.
No.
I just don't understand it. I just don't get it.
That's okay. Listen, this would be like if Glenn Danzig stepped away from the Misfits in 1981 and they brought in another guy for a month and then he disappeared. Long story short, for those that don't know the story, in late 1977, Black Sabbath parted ways with Ozzy Osbourne. They brought in a singer from a British singer named Dave Walker, who was in Fleetwood Mac for a minute, and Savoy Brown. They were working on the music for a new record. In January of 1978, they made an appearance on a television show called Look Here, which was, to my understanding, only shown in Birmingham, England. It was basically, to me, it seemed like it was almost like a public access show. And Black Sabbath appeared. They made this one public appearance, Tony Geezer and Bill with Dave Walker, and they played a piece of War Pigs, and they played this song, which at the time was untitled, and we now know it to be Junior's Eyes, which was on the 1978 Never Say Die record, which of course has Ozzy on it. And shortly after making this television appearance, they got rid of Dave Walker, they brought back Ozzy, and they recorded the record Never Say Die and did a world tour for it. That song does appear on it with Ozzy singing it, but with completely different lyrics. This was, again, January 1978, never been seen unless you lived in Birmingham, England. The audio has been traded on bootlegs for years. Bill and I have had it for decades. And people have talked about it, and there's a Black Sabbath super fan, Michael, I can't remember Michael's last name, who said that there's a broadcast museum in Birmingham, and he went to recently, this is how we Sabbath fans knew the footage existed. He's like, if you go to the museum in Birmingham, you could see the footage, but that's the only way you could see it.
Wow.
And this was like a year or two, so it was one of those dreams going, oh, holy shit, the footage actually exists? And
there's a public access channel museum in Birmingham.
I guess. I forget all the details.
That's cool.
About a month ago, the whole episode appeared, and I thought it was boring as shit, but it didn't get much traction till finally somebody cut out the Sabbath segment, posted that independently, and yeah, that's been seen now quite a bit on YouTube, and I'm shocked nobody's taking it off, but
it's probably on the Internet Archive now. Once I see something make it to the Internet Archive, which I think is again, despite all my feelings, despite my preconceived notions about some of this stuff. I'm a firm believer of the Internet Archive. I think it's a very important thing for the, internet documentation and the Wayback Machine and this and the other. And once I see something cross over to the Internet Archive, which I think very seldomly takes anything down, I think once it's there, that's it. It's there, and it's there forever. And so I bet you somebody put that Sabbath footage up there now. So even if it does get taken down, it'll probably be there. That's just the way these things work.
It also might be property of that channel or BBC or whoever it was that filmed it and broadcast, and not necessarily Sabbath's.
I guess the equivalent, another equivalent, if we wanted to make an equivalent to the Misfits, it would really be like Misfits appearing on Uncle Floyd in Halloween of 1980. I know Don knows. I know Chris. Both you guys know what I'm talking about. That's Doyle's first appearance with the actual band. It's not his first live appearance.
Was that the Irving Plaza?
Well, that was right before they went to go do that Irving Plaza show. They went on Uncle Floyd. So technically, Doyle's first
appearance.
Yeah, first public appearance with the band was, and mind you, he had been recording with the band for some time, but his first public appearance with the band was that Uncle Floyd Halloween show, which, Uncle Floyd is nutso about protecting, and a lot of that stuff doesn't exist, man. I mean, he has some tapes, but a lot of them got wiped. It doesn't even exist.
Sure.
I used to love that show. That's great.
Yeah.
I had a hard time getting it in. It was on one of those in-between channels that
UHF. It was like
I don't know where it was being
UHF.
broadcast from, but somewhere too far to get other than grainy. I still watched it, holding the rabbit ears up, You
know what, though? What's crazy is, like, every once in a while, like, a U-matic master will just turn up on YouTube. Like, they had, like, Steve Bader's, like, just randomly on Uncle Floyd, Steve Bader's from the Dead Boys.
Wow.
Randomly just was uploaded, and it was so crystal clear. And I just kept thinking in my head, like, God, like, where's that fucking where's the Misfits one? It's got to be out there, man. It's
somewhere in the world there might exist a copy. Who knows?
Who knows? Who knows? There's
something that keeps us all going. It's fun.
There's it does it, like, there is something wonderful, like, there is this weird in between where it's like there are things that I haven't heard, and I'm like, thank God I know that they exist. I know that they exist, and sometimes I know it sounds really fucked up, but sometimes that's just enough, because it gives me hope that someday maybe I will hear it, because I have been in situations where I was privileged to hear interesting things. You know what I mean? So it's like, just to know it exists, allows me to sleep at night. Hearing that it's destroyed, hearing that it burned in a fire, hearing that there was a flood, that's the stuff that really breaks my heart, where I'm just like, that there's never going to be a time.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like doing docs, like the best stuff is that moment when, you go in the storage unit and they whip it open and you're like, here it is. Here's all the stuff. That's what happened with Dio. We walked in there and it was just like,
wow.
All the stars, the hearing aid tapes, all the masters of that. And, that's just like as a collector, that you take a responsibility that this shit's important, like what we do as documentary filmmakers, where, that shit's important. Like the fact that, like, these things exist because someone took the time to record it, film it, and, took enough care of it that it can find its way out, 40, 50, 60 years later. So, it's exciting, and so that's just like what keeps everything moving. I think, like, keeps us all going as fans, as, people that are interested in stuff, and, just that there's still a little mystery out there, and that there's still, like, stuff to discover. And I mean, we all have our shit, like, I've also heard the Night of the Living Dead footage that they were shooting a music video that, like, who knows where that footage is.
It exists, and it's safe, and it's digitized.
You've seen it?
I haven't seen it, but I know that I have not seen it. I've seen the stills that everybody's seen from the fire. I do know that I know that it is intact.
Yeah,
and I hope
that's awesome news.
yeah, like intact in the sense that it's my understanding that it's a treasure trove, like just a treasure trove. So, but what, I'm kind of curious to know specifically, because you brought up Dio. Were there any like mind-boggling surprises when you went through that vault or archive or whatever it was, that you were just like, holy shit, I had no idea that this exists or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of all of this stuff. A lot of this stuff was like recorded once and thrown on a shelf, or somebody forgot about it, or there's like master tapes that no one's been through, and so like even going through, I remember we were in Ronnie's kitchen with Wendy, and we rented a beta SP deck, because that's all the masters were on that, and we set up a thing at the kitchen table, and we were just watching Ronnie do like vocal takes, and like just raw, and it's so you can see the video is kind of fucked up, it's skits out because the tape was damaged, but like what they captured was like some shit that no one had seen before, and all these like raw footage of like all the stuff being documented at the time. So there was a lot of great moments. There was a lot of like and there always is when you do these things, like you just never know, like especially when you get people in a mode of like unearthing their past and stuff, then they start taking the boxes out and going through all the stuff that they haven't seen in 40, 50 years, and that's where they get excited about stuff too. So there was some elf stuff that we had heard that no one had ever heard before, which was super cool.
Wow.
Just like all that shit. It's just like it's really cool. And it's also great, obviously, when you're doing it with, the people that control it, right? So you're not like,
that's the key. If you don't have
that, wouldn't have been cool if like we weren't, if I had access to all that stuff, I of course would want to see it. But we weren't doing anything wrong. Like it was like we were part of the process of like preserving this stuff and making sure that it like had a shelf life,
And I think that's like, I mean, that's kind of the key with any of this stuff. It's like just when you're aligned with the powers that be. Like I think of like Peter Jackson doing Get Back, and like just the incredible cooperation that he had from the Beatles and Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr and Yoko and everybody. Yoko to a lesser extent, but that's another story for another day. And the fact that he's a fucking hero, because the reality is, I don't know if you guys are familiar, but like, they tacked on several hours that it was not supposed to be 8 or 9 hours or whatever it was. It was supposed to be like 6 hours or 4 hours or something. And Peter Jackson, the hero that he fucking is, he somehow threw a Hail Mary and got it through the powers that be. I think he just did it and turned up with a cut and was like, hey, it's actually 8 hours. And they were like, all right.
I think I still think, and it should be taught in a class, like, the remarkable thing about that whole thing was that for Beatles fans, and like, when I was a kid, watching Let It Be, the narrative was they hated each other and Yoko broke up the band. Like that was the narrative created by that film that was presented to the public. And that was the story for 40, 50 years. And then all of a sudden, Peter goes back into this footage, and yeah, there's squabbling and stuff, but like when you take all the bad parts and you cut them together, it looks like everything's bad. But like when you show the whole thing, it's like any family or
more
any
nuanced.
Yeah,
it's more nuanced.
Way more nuanced. And so it told a completely different story. Yeah. And that in and of itself is pretty remarkable, because it changed the narrative.
That's probably the crux to all these. The demos we're talking about and this Dave Walker footage, the bigger picture you're seeing, because like we talked about with this Dave Walker single song, the audio we've had for 10 or 20 years, he sounds pretty good. I mean, he's no Ozzy, but all right. But then you see him, and then it's like, oh, he's totally wrong. So sounded Absolutely. Good, but it's just so you hit the nail on the head. It's this broader, bigger picture, and connecting some dots, filling in some, That's the magic of finding just more and as much as you can from these favorite artists, you know.
But what's amazing is that, like, even just the fact that he developed the technology. I'm sure, I don't know, Don, have you seen They Shall Not Grow Old?
The World War II one?
Yeah, World
I
War
have.
One.
No.
You especially if anybody as a documentary filmmaker, I mean, even the making of is just as great as the actual film, and like what he did, and the fact that
That's
like
cool.
they had lip readers come in. This is crazy. This is insane. They had lip readers reading the lips of people for silent footage.
Oh man.
And then they had voice actors come in and they dubbed the voices of people that had been dead for 100 fucking years. And obviously it wasn't their voice, but it was like they gave them a voice on silent footage. Just insane to consider the idea, like all the stuff that they were able to do. And so I feel like, and it's kind of sad to me, like I kind of feel like there almost needs to be like some sort of and again, I don't want to, this is not, please don't mistake this as like a political thing. This is just me saying like some sort of national funded documentary preservation society that goes around and preserves tapes, because so much of it comes down to resources and money. But like the idea that, some sort of place where maybe even protections are provided, like you send us this tape, we ensure that your rights as the media owner are protected, and the intellectual rights of the person who owns the IP is also protected. But you allow us, because think about how many things, this is something that's really sad. Think about how many things get destroyed because somebody is afraid of, so they're going to steal my tape and that's my payday, versus that guy has our tape and we don't want it to come out and we're going to sue him if he will, like back and forth. And then what happens is somebody dies, or there's a flood, or there's a fire, as I said, and that shit just gets lost to time. That's fucked up. That, to me, that's the greatest sin of all. So like there's this weird sort of gray area, Robin Hoodish gray area of like Indiana Jones, like maybe this can't come out, but it definitely belongs in a museum. And so therefore it needs to be preserved by any means necessary, just to ensure that it's going to live on past the irresponsibility of an owner of something, and that's a situation too, so it's all subjective. It's all nuanced. I'm glad that Jim, at the end of the day, if Jim Simpson hadn't sat on these tapes or kept them in pristine condition, wouldn't even be having the conversation in the first place. Yeah. He was a custodian of these incredible historical documents, because at the end of the day, as going back to what we were saying before, and we got to wrap this up, you guys, this is a great fucking conversation. As I was saying before, the idea that, these are not so much like finished songs that we want to enjoy. These are historical documents that are telling the story of a history that we care deeply about and are integral in understanding that history on a deeper level. And the idea that somebody, no matter what their aims were, that they held on to something for 50 fucking years is no small feat in and of itself. So even what Jim Smith, so like the flip side, I'm flipping to my other side of my fucking argument here. The flip side is like, there's got to be something said for a guy who fucking whether it's money or whatever reason, that he fucking kept this thing that Sabbath fans feel so fucking, precious about. He kept it safe for you guys, so that's interesting too.
Agreed.
I love your idea, Jeff, about preserving anything. I love your idea about preserving anything artistic ever recorded, filmed, and especially in the wake of this AI bullshit revolution that's coming.
Hell yeah.
Stealing the hearts and souls of all of us and a lot of artists. Maybe not quite yet, but it's coming. I mean, there's already been some #1 songs on the country charts generated by AI.
Yeah, that's fucked up. I mean, that's just great. That's just fun. Here's the thing. So here's my take on AI. Like, I think on a pure social media, like, hey, how funny would it be if we put Macaulay Culkin in a Batman suit, or no, in a Robin suit, running away from a Batman Pauly Shore. That's fucked up. I kind of want to see what that would look like. Hey, we can do that with fucking AI. That, like, as an internet meme, okay, great, a novelty. But like just about every other like application creatively, outside of using, like, say what Peter Jackson did with the Mal software, which actually allowed them, using AI, they were able to extract and separate John Lennon's vocal from the piano, which allowed them to properly mix and release Now and Then finally after 25 fucking years. That's all because of AI. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, you know, AI as a tool, when used in the proper context, in the proper way, does have its place. I mean, I'm sure, hey, Don, fucking Warp Stabilizer in Premiere Pro, that uses some sort of artificial intelligence or some shit. I mean,
man. These are I mean, if we could just control ourselves and not be like maniacs about literally like everything and take it to the most extreme, like it's a tool. Like Photoshop and Premiere and Avid, they're all tools that help you do a thing. And when you're a visual effects artist, you use software to do that stuff. This just automates a lot of the stuff that has already been out there. But the problem is we've already, like, as soon as it's come out, we've already figured out how to like exploit it in the worst possible way. That is going to take all the shit like and leave us with, like, you know, all of the bad and very little of the good, you know, and it's all our own fault, you know, like, and that's like we keep talking about. It's like them out there. It's like, it's us. It's everybody that is, if you use it, then you're responsible. You know, that's what it comes down to. And, you know, you get just like, I don't use it as much as these people do, or I don't use it. It just doesn't matter. You know, it's being used. And now that it's like you said with the internet, once it's on the internet, it's over. Once people now know that they can do Macaulay Culkin as Batman, they're never going to not do it. You know?
You know, I will say though, there is a hell of a novelty to when I see these songs like arranged. Somebody does, you know, Hybrid Moments as a 70s Motown soul song, and it fucking sounds awesome, like,
no, it's crazy,
awesome. And I'm like, that's fucked up, but that's also fucking really cool. And like, there's that whole aspect of it too, because I'm like, the novelty. There's like this novelty aspect where, you know what it does? It becomes like, these used to be the conversations that you'd have at like the video store, you know, as a clerk behind the video store, you're just having bullshit conversations about like, what if this and what if that? And
now you can do it.
Yeah, we live in this weird fucking reality where like someone's like, hey man, you want to hear Hybrid Moments if it was a fucking Motown song? Fuck yeah, I want to. Yeah, let me. It sounds fucking crazy, dude.
To tie it back to Sabbath, you know, I haven't seen any lately or heard any lately, but for quite a while, there was tons of AI songs of Sabbath, and it would be like somebody, of course, like you said, had the conversation. Hey, what would it sound like to have Ozzy Osbourne sing the song "Heaven and Hell"? Well, with AI, I've heard it. You know, then somebody's like, hey, how would it be to have Ronnie James Dio sing the Sabbath song "Headless Cross"? Well, somebody did it. So now there are tons of those.
Headless Cross, is that one of the later Sabbath singers or something?
Tony Martin sang that record from 1989.
Okay. Yeah, because I know eventually there's some point in Sabbath's history where everybody's gone except for Tony Iommi.
Yes.
And he's just like, he's still got the Sabbath name. In fact, I think he even did a solo record and the label was like, no. Call it, it's still got to have Black Sabbath. And Tony was like, all right, whatever.
Seventh
Star.
Is that what it is? Seventh Star.
Seventh Star, yeah.
It's not a bad record. There's actually
record.
A couple good songs.
Like not really a Sabbath record, but yeah.
But that's what I mean. But exactly that point, like the idea of like, I'm sure even Tony Iommi at that point was like, all right, like, look, it's just me now. And, you know, I've got the name and I'm doing my thing. But like, you know, I just rather just do. He did do a Tony Iommi record in the 90s, right? There was an Iommi record.
There was, he did one in the 90s and two in the 2000s.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking of a record called Iommi, just straight up.
That's where he had multiple singers.
Right. Is that in the 2000s, that one?
I
That
Maybe that might have been 2000. Fused was the record he did with Glenn Hughes. But yeah,
Okay.
just the Iommi record. It was Iommi played guitar obviously in every song, and he had Phil Anselmo sing one song. He had Ian Astbury from the Cult sing another song. Pete Steele from Typo Negative sang another song.
Wow.
Every song. I believe Ozzy did a song. So yeah, every song had a different singer. The unfortunate thing is, in the world we live in, those records sound great, but they never sell well.
Yeah, that's always a weird paradox thing. Before I want to close out with like final thoughts and final statements from everybody. I just want to thank you, the three of you, because you guys are awesome. Like all three of you, awesome contributions, awesome ideas. I love the flow of conversation. Really, really great stuff.
Nice to
like really, truly tip the hat off to all three of you. But before we go, I'm just clarify something for me with this Back to the Beginning show. It's my understanding, because I watched the documentary, I was a little annoyed by the documentary in the sense that, it covered a lot of stuff, but there was, go ahead.
Which documentary did you watch?
Well, I know that there was one that was going to come out on HBO, and then it got pulled at the last minute, came out on Paramount Plus instead. Is that what? So there's two different documentaries.
There's two different documentaries, but those are really both sort of about Ozzy and only a little bit about Back to the Beginning. They're really about Ozzy's struggles.
Yes.
Yeah.
But so why did it get pulled by HBO?
That I don't know. I thought that was originally always going to be on Paramount Plus. But yeah, that's like 2.5 hours. We talked about it the other day, Bill. What the hell was the name of that one?
Yeah.
The one that came out on Paramount Plus.
So No Escape From Now is the one on Paramount Plus,
right?
And Coming Home is the one that was done by the BBC.
There's another Coming Home. There's that. Yeah, I want to check that out. Is it a lot of overlap?
There is some overlap. There's even some of the same footage. The one on Paramount Plus is the one to watch because it covers so much more. And the narrative of Coming Home is Ozzy's moving. And that's the narrative. It's 59 minutes, and we know how it ends.
Right.
For the other one, No Escape From Now, he's moving, but then his unbelievable health struggles, and, of course, Back to the Beginning, but also we know how that documentary ends. So of the two, that's the one to watch. But there hasn't yet been a Back to the Beginning documentary. There is a Back to the Beginning film that is supposed to be released in theaters in the U.S. In early 2026. At least that was right, Bill. That was the last thing we heard a few months ago.
Yeah, I haven't heard much, but that's news came out maybe 6 months ago or so. Right?
That was Sharon's plan.
I haven't heard much about it lately.
Clarify this for me. I read it in some places, and I can't seem to verify it. Is it true that Ozzy was not going to actually sing at the show? He pulled the plug at the last minute and then ended up doing it anyway and did a full hour.
I think he was always. I don't think there was. He was always going to perform.
He was going to perform.
If you watch the video very closely in No Escape From Now, which is the one on Paramount Plus, originally he was going to sing. But when they go through the entire documentary and you see all his terrible, terrible illnesses, he's going to sing, and then he's not going to sing, and then he's going to sing.
Guys, I apologize. I do have to run, so I will see you on the next one.
Don, thank you. I'll send you the video. Don, we got to talk. We'll talk in the future, man.
Sounds good, dudes.
Thank you, buddy.
Ruled, man.
Yeah.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it, guys.
Congratulations to you again.
Thank you.
Mazel tov to you. Amazing work.
Cheers, dudes.
See ya.
Bye, Don. Bye.
So if you watch that documentary, Ozzy did flip back and forth between. He wanted to do it from the get-go. That was the plan, and Sharon knew this was something for him to look forward to. But Bill and I talked about it. like we did on my show with Pete, Sabbath Stones, and on Bill's show, because in the press it kind of seemed like Ozzy was going to do it, then not do it. Well, when you watch the documentary, you can understand why his participation was so up in the air. But in the end,
he did. I mean, he did a fucking hour set.
He did an hour. He did 5 songs with his solo band and 4 songs with Black Sabbath.
Pretty fucking crazy, man.
Great, yeah.
It was as much as we could have expected. From in between it being announced and the show happening, they really were backtracking and on committing to how much he would do and so forth. So I think the 9 songs total was as good as anyone could have hoped.
Yeah.
The documentary shows you why.
Yeah. And the crazy thing that came out either today or yesterday, Jeff, was Sharon Osbourne did an interview with her friend Pierce Morgan, and Sharon had said that they went to the doctor 2 weeks before, back to the beginning, 2 or 3 weeks before, and the doctor told Ozzy, listen, if you do this show, you're not going to make it. And he was like,
that he would, if he exerted that much energy, that he would die?
Yes, that's according to Sharon. It was in the today or yesterday. She did the Pierce Morgan show, and sure enough, if that story is to be believed, unless Sharon is just trying to, get another narrative out there that Ozzy died for his fans, which could be. Or maybe it's bullshit. I don't know, because I like pro wrestling, and the story is all you need.
I kind of think it's
that's the story that's out there.
The opposite, that having that show come and what kept him going.
And that absolutely could be.
That's what I think, man. I think that he was living for that show,
because that was the whole point. You're right. That's
but it's amazing that, like, if that is true, it was probably a very easy decision to come by, because it's just like, I want to go out. I need to do this. I need to probably pushed himself like super hard. I watched it with my son. I was absolutely blown away that he did it from the sitting in his chair and wanted to stand up and yada, yada, yada. It was an incredible way to go out. It really, just
absolutely
tremendous.
I mean, if you were Ozzy Osbourne, where would you want to die? He probably wanted to die on that stage after that last song if he had his choice.
Do you know who Colonel Bruce Hampton is? You ever heard of this guy from the Aquarium Rescue Unit? He's in the jam band circles. And Colonel Bruce Hampton actually died on his birthday on stage playing a show. He died. That's how he died. He spent his last moments. During the encore or something, during the applause, he collapsed and died right then and there, having just completed a show. So it does happen. It does happen. And I wasn't from, I didn't listen to too much Colonel Bruce, but I knew who he was. My friend was really into him, so I was familiar with him. So he told me, he said, hey, Colonel Bruce died, and this is how he died. It blew my fucking mind, because it was just like, holy shit.
Right.
It's crazy. Any final thoughts as to wrap this all up, and anything to leave us with before we go?
You want me to go? I think the record's great. Thanks, Bill, for sending it to me. I'm glad. Thank God for Jim Simpson, because Jim is 87 years old. Now that this record, I think, is going to get tied up in the courts, I don't think Jim Simpson will live to see this thing released legally, and I don't think any of the three of us will live to see this released legally.
Wow.
But thank God Jim did release it digitally, and as you said, Jeff, it is on the internet, and once it's on the internet, it's forever.
That's the end. It's literally internet is end game. It's end game, and for the fans, that's a great thing, and for artists, it's not, and that's the weird sort of thing. I'd say that's my final remark. Bill, what would you like to add or contribute?
Just that collection of songs, it beyond expectations is what makes it so great. Like I said, three songs we never even heard of. 2 versions of one of the songs that we had heard of. So couple of great demo versions of stuff from the first album. It just exceeded expectations in kind of every way. It sounds excellent, you know. So yeah,
I'm
it's
happy
really-
for you. Then I am happy for
Yeah.
you both as the Sabbath fans that you are. That makes me happy. It does.
It's your Uncle Floyd set, you know, and then some.
or you know, listen, from you know, a couple of weeks ago, Feline Nursery.
Yeah,
You know?
and Drive Me. Yep.
Yep.
Absolutely. That was that. What? How did it feel to hear those? Final.
Mind blowing. I was like, holy shit, they're real.
Yeah, I mean, but what was so? But here's the thing: you knew that they existed. You knew that they existed. Imagine sitting down. Now, here, Bill. I'm gonna melt your face for one. Here's how I'm gonna end the show. I'm gonna melt your face. Ready? Imagine you go to Bill Ward's house to interview him, and he sits you down, and he plays you a tape, and you're expecting to hear a bunch of Sabbath songs that you know or that you've heard of, but then all of a sudden a song starts playing and you just didn't even know it existed. Nobody knew it existed. And
he puts on the legendary Lost Tapes.
he puts on the, you know, I had interviewed the first drummer, the founding drummer of the Misfits back in 2017, and he played for me his tape, and I've talked about it ad nauseum on the channel, like endlessly, like just a whole bunch of times. I'm sure Chris is tired of hearing it at this point.
Never tire of it.
but he's playing this tape, and I'm like, okay, there's Cough Cool, that's awesome. There's She, amazing. You know, these the Angel Fuck, awesome. Hybrid Moments, great. All of a sudden, he's like playing. There's a song playing. I'm like, what the fuck is this? And it's just something I had never heard before. And then another song happens. He goes, oh, and this one's called Infant Stranger, and this one's called Lullaby. And it's just there's not a single trace on the fucking internet that these songs existed. So it was like someone just magically out of thin air goes, here's 3 songs by your favorite fucking band that you didn't even know were fucking real and only exist because he pressed play on a fucking dingy little fucking recorder because they were never recorded, because he liked to review his live shows and drum practices.
Nice.
Amazing.
That must have been surreal.
40 years, those tapes. 40 years unheard. 40 years. Fucking crazy. Fucking.
We live for this stuff.
We live for this stuff.
That's the other thing about
the
it.
Greatest adventure. And furthermore, being offered the chance to listen to more tapes, but not doing it because I didn't trust the tape deck. I had a tape deck, and I was like, I refuse to be responsible for the destruction of this
guy
tape.
cares, man.
I cared. I did care.
Beyond,
I did eventually get to hear it, but I did eventually get to hear a little bit of it. But it took a long time. I had to wait a while before I was able to. And I did not want to be the fucking bozo that that put an invaluable tape in an untrustworthy fucking tape deck. Who wants to be that guy? It's fucking bullshit.
That's true.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. We're gonna call it a day right then and there. As always, we say peace, hair grease. Make sure you subscribe to Bill Clark's channel. We'll put it. Link will be down in the description. And obviously, you got to subscribe to the Sabbath Stones if you're a Sabbath fan, because these guys, you know what? I'm sorry, Bill, what's the name of your show one more time?
Classic Rock and Metal Review. Nice
the Classic Rock and Metal Review.
Logo. Yeah.
And that's the logo right there on the glass.
A lot of sound-alikes.
And the Sabbath Stones. I love that name, the title, the Sabbath Stones. I think that's great.
Yeah, that's on the Sea of Tranquility channel.
And that's on the Sea of Tranquility channel. So we'll make sure to link both of those. And I'll bid you adieu, gentlemen. I'm just going to end the show there. Have a good night, everybody.
See you, Jeff.
Bye. Oh, I got to throw the metal.